Hello, I'm live. Hello, welcome to this Saturday morning, Saturday social. I've already given the Rita's Cranberry-Rita Sparkling Margarita formal review, okay? And I was going to put this on the anti-war channel, the alternate channel, but I didn't want to have to try to link that up to Yard of Streams. And then I said, well, I'll give some of the people that know the channel, this main channel, better a chance to join, you know, because some of those people wake up early. Most don't, because they'd be up all night. They were doing a 4-hour hangout last night. I said, oh, no, I was working at bingo, and then I was watching the college football game. Tulsa upsetting Central Florida. Now, if Tulsa can beat Central Florida and Tulane can beat Tulsa, then Tulane can beat Central Florida, right? But we weren't worrying about Louisiana State University today playing Alabama. See what happens. Somebody told me I put my money on LSU. I said, I wouldn't count on that. But, you know, it's for 2:30 Central Time. Yes, I drank 3 cups of coffee and chicory this morning with milk. First cup I added sugar. The second 2 I did not, just added milk. But this concoction here, this is like revenge. It's a dish best served cold and very cold. And I put it in the freezer. Not for long, but milk, no sugar. Good idea. So I got the StreamYard so people can join, because you can't join YouTube Live. I mean, look at the ingredients down below. Let me look at. Now I have some Hogshead cheese with some hot sauce. They call it hot Hogshead cheese, but I'm trying to figure out what's hot about it. Water, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, barley malt, natural flavors, malic acid, citric acid, color added, you know, food coloring, and hop extract. Yummy. Don't you love health food? Yeah, it's 43 right now, but it's probably already 47, 48. The sun is out now, so it's going to get up to about 64. I got this sweatshirt on. It's pretty heavy. I was walking. I just have a T-shirt underneath it and the sweatshirt. I went walking at 6:20, and it made you walk fast. It was cold. I walked half a mile. I'm going to go walk half a mile after this. 294 calories, golly. Made on the 229th day of 2019. Natural and artificial flavors and artificial color. I bought this in a 12-pack, okay? If I'd have seen artificial flavors, I would not have purchased a single. I just try to steer clear of it. I mean, I don't actually believe it's going to hurt you, but I just want to have like a cutoff, you know, like natural flavoring I'll do. Artificial, I just won't, just because you got to have some boundaries. But it's probably not that serious. But if it's a serious at all, but it had the 12-pack at Walmart. They said it was $15.99, but like as usual at Walmart, it rang up $13.98. Walmart, if you go there, the prices tend to be lower at the register. Like it'll be lower. Other places like Circle K, you got to watch it. They'll say special 2 for $5, and you go there to the checkout, it'll say $3, and you say, hold on. Oh, and they'll always say, us the vendor's fault, they didn't change the tag. And then the vendors tell me, we don't even put tags on there. That's the, yeah, I'm still going through the 12 pack, but I only got one bottle after this, so it'll be over with. Joe Passamato. Yeah, everybody's excited down here. They're undefeated, ranked #1. Nick Saban must have pulled the strings to get LSU up to #1 so he could give his team an advantage, you know. We can beat #1 today. It's fine. I mean, it's like a fruit. What do you call those things? Those they sell them, those cocktail, those like ocean, I don't ever drink those things, but they're like cranberry cocktail. It's just like that, but it's 8% alcohol. It's heavy, $2.94. You're not going to lose weight with this. How's the beer selection at Winn-Dixie? Low average. I wouldn't call it good. And the prices are generally a D, poor. You can stumble across some values, like they had the Blue Moon Pumpkin for $7.99 a 6-pack. That's because they were trying to get rid of it because it was being closed out. So if you hit them at the right time, you're okay. But for daily shopping, nah, I don't mess with them. I'm still trying to find that Stella Artois Midnight Lager. Haven't had any success. Didn't come into any stores yesterday that I'm aware of. I don't know. Sometimes things come out, we can't get them. You know, that's it. Now, just the previous 2 flavored malt beverage from La Crosse, Wisconsin, they were much better than expected. I thought they were going to be nasty, but they weren't. They're actually good. Oh, okay. Well, I hope y'all have a good visit. Nice, enjoyable visit down there in Florida. I mainly visit there to go see the Tampa Bay Rays. I've probably been to 12 or 13 games there in the last 15 years. And then we'll do other things like, go on this nature trail, or go shopping for beer, wine, and liquor, naturally beer and liquor mainly. Go try different restaurants. Then oftentimes I'll go to Miami and go see the Marlins. And then I've stayed and driven twice to Key West. That's an interesting trip. And I've had most people I know have never been to Key West, and I tell them, you ought to take that ride with me. You know, you go down that overseas highways. Really, it's unique, but for whatever reason, I usually can't go. But I've been to 48 states and 5 Canadian provinces. They're all nice, but that Key West experience is unlike anything else I've experienced. It's just a cool thing. All right. 75th anniversary of World War II, the 1944 period, you understand. Yeah, I recommend that. It's fun to drive. You can see more. The Trop. Yeah, I've been to the Tropicana Field so many times. It's a unique stadium. People dog it like these baseball snobs. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, I'm doing well. Except for my leg, which is healing up. I'm getting bashed in the back of it. Luckily, it didn't get cut. But they'll say, you know, oh, it's weird. It's a strange stadium. It's got these peculiarities, and they don't like it. But my point is always, well, isn't that the whole reason we had all these unique ballparks built in the 1990s. But then they all to replace the cookie cutter ballparks. But then if you noticed, all the unique ballparks became cookie cutter ballparks. They all had red brickwork. You know, they're all the same. Brickwork, unusual angles in the outfield, which just contrived. In the old days, they would have these strange angles because the stadiums were built around some building they couldn't get the rights to tear down or whatever. Then they just had these contrived angles, like the ballpark might be built out in the middle of a field. There's no reason to have it go like jag and then jig and then over. And they would just do that. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. But then they were all like the same. So I said, you got rid of cookie cutter to make cookie cutter. So the most unusual ballpark of the 90s was Tropicana Field. And you started hearing complaints about it. And I think most of those complaints were perpetuated by the ownership, who took over in 2005. And they had an idea all along. They wanted to build a new stadium, naturally have the taxpayers pay for it. And they started putting that out there and really promoting that heavy. So then all of a sudden, oh, it's no good. There's problems. And ESPN oftentimes says negative things about it. And it makes you wonder if ABC, Disney doesn't have some secret investment, real estate investment interests that in the east side of Tampa Bay to have that built. But if you read TripAdvisor reviews of the ballpark, which is mostly just casual people going to the ballpark, like not even fans, maybe baseball fans, mostly just people that want to see something different. They're on a vacation in Florida and they'll say, or they're visiting relatives, like your father's visiting, and they'll say, oh, let's go to Tropicana Field because you can see it dominates the skyline of St. Petersburg. So they'll go. And then you read the reviews, it's all like 99% positive. And they say, oh, it's great. And they all has food varieties, and it's like a big circus tent. And they have the rays for the children to pet. And then they go on and on about how nice it is. And then after you read 50 of those comments, you'll read one saying, I hate that place. And I say, oh, see, that's one of the baseball snobs. And then it goes on. And I don't know. So I thought it was ironic that the people that claim they wanted different type of ballparks are always targeting the one that's the unique ballpark, the one that's not the cookie cutter with the brickwork and the wiggly waggly angles. And it's even another unique aspect. It has the bullpen on the field. The pitchers warm up on the field, which is unusual. There's no enclosed bullpen. But you see, people are very strange with that. They want unique, but they want it to be standardized, same, unique, everything the same. All right, we're going to go into World War II. Yeah, they've been talking about getting rid of Tropicana Field since 2005. Not the people of St. Petersburg. They seem to like it. The government of the municipal government seems to like it. It's the ownership who's from New York. And there's that. It's a sad thing. He probably has a secret plan to move the team. He probably always did have a secret plan to move the team. And so what you do first is you alienate the fan base, like antagonize the fan base so that you can have poor attendance and then say, look, I got poor attendance, when it could have been what you were planning all along. And then you can say, well, I have to just move to, oh, I don't know, Montreal perhaps, which ironically lost their team the same year he started to buy the Rays. Get it? Catching on now? Yeah, Marlins Stadium is another one that's unique. It's different, so people don't like it. It's got no wiggly waggly lines. It's got no brickwork. It's looks like a big spaceship. Looks like it's Reliant, like when Khan took over Reliant. But it's neat. It's an interesting place. And they have the same kind of ownership problems. They antagonize the fan base, and they like almost like they're purposely trying to make attendance bad so they can move. Oh, I'm sorry you got hurt. oh, my injury hurt like hell. If I showed you this bruise, you'd be like, oh no. And they were saying, go to the hospital. I said, for what? They're going to tell me put ice on it and elevate it. Well, I mean, I could do that myself. They can't, so and people were saying, take this and that pain medicine. I said, nah, I would rather feel the pain and then judge each day how the pain is changing, you see. So it kind of dissipated. It keeps slightly dissipating each day, which helps you track if it's getting better or whatever, and you get weird sensation. I didn't really want to mask it. It wasn't unbearable pain anyway. It's irritating and unpleasant, but it's not unbearable. The Red Sox just signed former Rays executive as a GM. Oh, okay. Bloom. Okay. Los Angeles. The Angels in Anaheim and the Dodgers? I don't think so. You're thinking of the Cubs maybe in Chicago. They used to have that, but they built enclosed bullpens. Because I think the only two left was Wrigley Field and Tropicana. I think that's pretty much correct. And it's funny that they say, oh, to build a retractable roof stadium like Miami. But Miami never retracts the roof, maybe 10 games a year because the weather's so unbearable. It's so hot. It's like in Houston. They got this expensive retractable roof, but it never retracts. They just keep it closed. Tropicana Field's enclosed. It doesn't open. So it's a totally enclosed. It's the only major league ballpark that has what do you call it? A standard roof, just a dome that doesn't move. But I mean, it's so hot. You go down there and it's so hot, and then you go in the stadium and it's 72 degrees. And like my father says, I can be comfortable, just be sweating and sweating. And so I have a friend that lives in the Woodlands. Well, he just moved to an area outside the Woodlands, but he said it's so ridiculous. I mean, they built this retractable roof stadium in Houston and they never open it because it's so hot. I mean, they just keep it, and it's raining a lot. So they just keep it closed. I mean, in a place like Toronto, yeah, it makes sense because in the summer you can retract the roof and it's nice. It's like July in Toronto is like our October or September. But it's nice. So, or in Seattle, but they just have a roof that slides. It's like an accordion. There's no air conditioning or heating in there. They just open it. It's just for rain, so not for cold. When I went to Seattle in the summer, it was cold. I would call it cold, but I mean, it was raining all the time. They closed the roof walls at the game. We got to go to World War II. Okay, Busch Stadium fits in with the rest of the city. Every building around it has red brick. The whole city used to be red brick buildings. Right, you go to St. Louis and the people live in the houses. They're all red brick and drive around and every building's red brick. Yeah, that's fine. And Orioles Park, Baltimore Orioles Park at Camden Yards, they built it like a warehouse because in a warehouse district on the edge of town, close to the waterways. So that started it. They built that. Comiskey Park started in '91. It was the first modern open air baseball only park. And they bragged about it at first. When it first was open, they said, this is it. This is the new age. And then later, that stadium's terrible. And I was like, well, how was it great? And now all of a sudden it's terrible. So then they retrofitted it to make it look like a cookie cutter with the brickwork and the black iron work and all. I was like, forget about unique. I mean, that doesn't have a place in this world. Maybe it's San Diego that has the bullpen on the field. It could be, but I don't recall that. I went there in 2007 to a night game, only one. I noticed that stadium was getting rusty after only 3 years of being open. But you're right next to the Pacific Ocean. Probably a lot of salt content in the air. I was looking around thinking, man, I hate to see what this is going to look like in 10 years, because you could just see in the rafters, it was already, the paint was peeling and you could see rust. I said, there's no way they could really prevent that. But what they do now, they don't renovate stadiums now. They just tear them down and build a new one. After 20 years, they just kind of let them go. Like I went to PNC Park in Pittsburgh in '04. Beautiful, awesome, all black. And then I went back in 2014 and all the black had faded from the sun. You know how it gets like chalky looking, oxidized, and all the seats were starting to look that way. And I was like, ain't no way they're going to renovate it. They're going to just demolish it in 10 years, 2024. You know, I'm just thinking, because it probably costs so much to renovate it, you may as well tear it down. Maybe it's, okay. So now World War II. And then, well, I'm getting off the air here. Screen share. With 2 monitors, screen sharing works best on a good computer. Well, I don't know if this Dell you would call this Dell a good computer. I don't know. It doesn't look like it's working. Let's see. Is it showing the map of Europe? Oh, I think it was. Okay. So it's kind of strange the way they give you instructions and they're confusing. So let me know if it's showing it. I've been dying to go to Petco Field. My friend loved it. Yeah, it's all right. It's nice. Okay, I think it is showing the screen. So by 1944, we have National Socialist Germany here, right? Actually, here and here, because it got cut into 2 parts. But after World War I, 1919. But so that Soviet Union from the west, from the east, by around this time in 1944, had already bashed through and reclaimed all of Russia, White Russia, Ukraine here, there's Kiev, and now they're blasting into the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, occupying most of the Baltic states, but there were some German pockets of resistance. Finland had surrendered and nominally joined the Allies against Germany, but not really wanting to fight Germany. So, because Finland and Germany had been allies for a long time, the only reason Finland surrendered is because they knew they were going to get invaded and they had no chance of winning. So they were just like, we got to give up. We have to give up. And Finland did not join Germany because they supported National Socialism or the idiosyncratic German racial ethnic theories or any of that. They just, and Finland had a democratic republic government. You know, they were a democratic republic. They had a liberal democratic government. They were not a dictatorship like Germany, Italy, Czechoslovakia, Austria. Well, I mean, not Czechoslovakia. They were a democratic republic, federation. Austria, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, etc. But they simply joined the German war effort for practical reasons. Finland had been attacked by the Soviet Union, and so they wanted to get their land back. And they were friendly towards each other. Germany and Finland had common interests like trade and whatever, and they always got along. So Germany didn't try to interfere with the internal affairs of Finland. They didn't care if they had a democratic government or a dictatorship or whatever. It was really irrelevant to them. So they worked together. But by 1944, Finland realized the jig is up, so they're going to get invaded. So they told the Soviet Union, well, okay, we'll give up. And then the stipulation was you have to declare war on Germany. So they did. It's not showing a map. It's still not showing a map. Well, it said click, choose, and click, but it wouldn't let me click on anything. I don't know. StreamYard's got a lot of faults. Like, you know, it's saying choose, but then it doesn't let you choose. Let's see. Chrome tab. Share audio. I'm not sharing audio because I'm not sharing with anybody. Application window. Oh, maybe this will work. See, your entire screen doesn't work. Let's try application window. I don't know what's going to happen, y'all. Does this work? See, I can't see what. I could look on YouTube, huh? And watch my own video. Didn't think of that. Let's see what happens. They're recommended I watch my own video. Bear with me. I don't know how to use StreamYard too well, as you might have noticed. So that was it. Finland's out. Romania, they're going to get invaded. They got no chance of winning. They're not a strong country anyway, so they got out. They overthrew the government. The army basically overthrew the government. And they surrendered to the Soviet Union, and they declared war on Germany. That was part of the agreement. So then the Romanian troops start attacking the German troops. And so now you got USSR heading toward East Prussia and into mid-Poland. And then you got USSR and Romanian troops fighting Germany. Bulgaria had never been at war with Russia. They were pro-German because they wanted to capture Yugoslavian and Greek territory. But they told Germany, look, we're not fighting Russia. We always had good relations with the Soviet Union, so we don't want to have any part of that. But now their Soviet troops are heading toward Romania, so they don't really have much choice. The Soviets were saying, we don't really care about that, so do what you want to do. And they said, we'll surrender. And so then they start fighting Germany reluctantly. Greece, the Soviets and the British from the south and the Soviets from the northeast liberate Greece and Albania. And then you see Montenegro here, Serbia here, Kosovo here, Serbia. And then by the end of 1944, and we'll get to Poland in a minute. Let's see if it's showing. Oh, good. It is showing it. Hey, hey, hey. The new Midway movie looks good. World War II is essentially continuing of World War I after the disaster of the Treaty of Versailles. Right. So we're here in November 2019. So let's go up till November 1944. The Warsaw thing was a disaster. Warsaw, the capital of Poland, occupied Poland. Soviet troops approached into eastern Poland, which they had invaded in 1939 in partnership with Germany, and by the way, have never returned. White Russia has never returned any of the captured territories to Poland, nor has Ukraine. White Russia and Ukraine. So the Brest-Litovsk border is still the border today. The German, the Soviet National Socialist so-called Nazi border of 1939 is the border of 2019. So they encouraged the Polish patriots to rise up against Germany, which really made no sense. Stage a revolt. Why stage a revolt? The Soviets are going to be here in a week, right? You could lay low and they're going to come in and take over the city anyway. So why fight? I mean, there's no point to that. It's like in Paris. Rise up, rise up. Well, why? The Allies are coming. There's unnecessary bloodshed and killing. And you're not going to accomplish anything. It's going to happen anyway. People, but they never talk about that on the news or history shows, World War II shows, right? They don't talk about that. Like unnecessary violence that doesn't accomplish anything. But this was a very interesting story because the Polish patriots rose up. They were mostly Catholic and they were not communist supporters. So it might have been a trick by the Soviets to get them to rise up. and then let the Germans annihilate them all. Because when the Polish staged their uprising in the summer of 1944, the Soviet troops who were very close to the city on the eastern outskirts suddenly stopped. They just stopped. And then they continued their attacks in the southern area of Europe. See here. Well, that's a mistake there. Turkey was not part of the war, so that should be white, neutral. Turkey was not involved in World War II, except on paper in 1945. They declared war on Germany. I think it was, what, March? It was a meaningless declaration of war. They took no part in the war. It's just, it was a paper declaration. The Germans counterattacked against the Polish patriots and annihilated them, captured many thousands of them, and then demolished the city building by building with demolition charges. So once the Soviet Union did invade Warsaw later in the year, later 1944, they installed a communist government which stayed in power until 1989, interestingly. So they obviously baited the people into rising up and then had no intention to help them. Sort of like 1939 when the British, you know, the British, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, encouraged Poland to resist Germany's demands and said, don't worry about Germany, we'll help you. And then when the Polish people the Polish government stood up to Germany and said, go to hell, we're not going to give in to your demands. Then Germany invaded Poland, and guess who doesn't show up to help? The British say, oh, well, you know, we're busy, you know, we can't help. We can't help. Like Pat Buchanan said, they should have just given Germany what they asked for, which was 2 railroads to East Prussia and a highway, you know, a modern, we call it interstate highway, and let them have the city of Danzig, which was 90% German. And then there would have been no war, more than likely. But so you're encouraging people to to fight a battle they have no chance of winning, and then you don't deliver the help you promised to give. Strange, right? Okay, insidious in a way. So this was the situation on the Eastern Front as November 1944 came around. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania are gone, or practically gone. There's a German pocket, but no hope of victory. Finland is gone. Slovakia is being invaded. Slovakia was a pro-German country. This is Slovakia here. The capital is Bratislava. Why were they pro-German? Because Germany helped them break away from the Czechs, so they didn't like. Hungary was pro-German to an extent. They didn't exactly trust Germany, but they were pro-German. And but then by 1944, they realized that they had no chance of winning. They were going to be invaded, so they secretly started to communicate with the Soviet Union. Germany knew they were doing it, and when they realized they were about to surrender to the Soviet Union, Germany invaded Hungary, overthrew the government, and installed a pro-German government, and basically occupied the country and prepared to resist the Soviet invasion. So Hungary was screwed. Romania, like I said, dropped out. Bulgaria dropped out. Greece was liberated by the British and Soviets and became a Western-oriented country. They tried to set up a communist government in Greece, but the British were able to defeat the communist rebels by 1949, 48, 49, and Greece remained a Western-oriented country, today part of the NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Albania was liberated by the Soviets, or you should better say occupied by the Soviet Union, and continued to have a communist government until the 1990s. But later on, they had a Maoist government, pro-China government, and became dedicated enemies of the Soviet Union. Albania was one of the Soviet bloc countries that was anti-Russian, anti-Soviet, and became a pro-Chinese Maoist kind of a oddball country. But then no one was interested in Albania, the poorest country in Europe. So there was no Cold War in Albania because no one cared about Albania. Yugoslavia was occupied by the Soviet Union eventually, but they became an independent communist country. Tito did not trust the Soviet Union, and so he said, yes, we're communists, but we don't want to be a Soviet satellite. We'll be an associated state. And they had enough ability to remain independent. But then their whole enterprise collapsed in 1991. And that's another story. And then Hungary became a Soviet-occupied country with a communist government until 1989. And then so did Czechoslovakia, a Soviet-dominated country, which had a communist government until 1989. Well, once the communist government collapsed, we know the Czechs and the Slovaks who didn't ever, oh, and see this part here, this tail, Ruthenia, was immediately annexed by Ukraine, who controls it to this very day. Ruthenia, the Russians. So Slovakia today has that abrupt cut right here. And it's just Slovakia and Czechia. But they didn't like each other, and so the Slovaks seceded from Czechoslovakia in 1993 and remain an independent country today. No one seemed to take notice. Czechia. So here's the situation on the Eastern Front, 1944. The Soviet Union is already encroaching on German territory, Memel, parts of East Prussia, Eastern Poland, and then Ruthenia, half of Hungary, up into Buda and past Romania, all of that, all of Bulgaria. Forget that color, that's a mistake. Not Greece, which became a British satellite, if you want to call it that. Albania, yes. Yugoslavia, yes. The German, I can't remember the army that was there, but they had a pretty capable commander. So the Germans were able to slowly withdraw from Yugoslavia in order, not in disarray, and fight a very tough, slow withdrawal all through November, December, January, February, March, April, and even in May, after the German surrender, they continued to fight in Yugoslavia, in the Slovenia. What about Italy? Well, the Allies had occupied southern Italy in 1943. They continued to drive up the boot of Italy, occupying Rome in the spring of 1944. Then the upper middle section of Italy, then Florence, and then by the end of 1944, they're close to the northern Italian cities, the wealthy part of Italy, by the way, the industrial, more Germanic part of Italy, the Holy Roman Empire section of Italy. Remember, Venezia, Lombardy, Savoy, Nice, Genoa, the areas that are today the wealthy part of Italy. Bologna, Venice, Milano, Genoa. All right. So by 1944, as that year comes to a close, most of Italy, the only northern Italy is still German occupied. Switzerland never got involved in a war, so they're not going to play a factor in it. They were neutral in World War I and World War II. France, hammer here, hammer and anvil, succeeded in running the Germans out of France. There were a few German pockets here. The Germans wanted to hold on to the port cities, Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, La Rochelle, this little area here, Brest, which the Allies said, well, it's not worth having huge battles to liberate these cities. We could wait till Germany's defeated at the end of the war. They did occupy Cherbourg Peninsula, and then Calais and the Dunkirk area. All right, so and then Alsace and Lorraine was occupied by the Allies. The area that Germany and France have been squabbling over since the 1600s, because it's like a Franco-Germanic area. The people are like somewhat German and somewhat French. Many of the Louisiana French people come from Alsace and Lorraine. And that's a big area of French beer production. Makes sense, right? Because see that border here? That used to be the French border. And then France seized it from Germany in 1648, and Germany never forgot that. And they had ongoing wars back and forth over that middle area. That was determined really by the Treaty of Verdun in the year 843, when you had Lothair and Charles, and who was the third grandson of Charlemagne, Charles the Great. They couldn't decide on who should be the ruler of the empire, so they divided it into France, Germany, and a middle section running from here down to Italy. And Burgundy here eventually got swallowed up by France. Burgundy. Belgium, and all that. Well, that's another story. So then Belgium is mostly freed by the Allies. They already invaded Southern Holland. So by the end of 1945, you can see the results. Germany is in a pickle and they ain't getting out of it. Most of their attention is in the east. The vast majority of their troops are in the east. Millions of German troops in the east trying to somehow stop the Soviet advance, but not succeeding very well. In the west, trying to hold back the Allies. The British want a quick end of the war. They wanted to come around, outflank Germany here, and go to Berlin. So that the British wanted to go like an end around, like sucker the German troops into coming down here along the border and then coming around the back. The Americans under Eisenhower say, no, we want this wide approach from Switzerland to the sea and just slowly move east into Germany. And then the Russians, the Soviets will slowly move west, and then we'll just smash them in the middle. Meanwhile, the German National Socialist government is saying, well, we're going to lose, obviously. They knew that for 2 years. But they're thinking maybe, hold on, gonna get some water. They're saying maybe by some sort of Brandenburg miracle, like Frederick the Great, we could knock the Allies out of the war, team up with them, talking about England and United States, and then all of us gang up and fight the Soviet Union. This was actually a theory that Churchill was trying to shop around, but nobody was biting on it. Churchill was like the earliest Cold War proponent. Now remember, Churchill subscribed to the British idea of Russia is the menace of the world. But they had to put that on the back burner because then they realized that Germany, or they decided that Germany was the menace to the world. So remember, in the 1930s, the Soviet Union, the British Empire decided to put the USSR on the back burner and deal with Germany, who they had already hammered down in World War I. But they said, let's finish them off. Then after Germany's wiped out, we can go and deal with the original enemy, the Russians, who we've been having issues with since 1815. So remember, Churchill was saying to Roosevelt, hey, how about this idea? Germany still has millions of troops with tanks, jet aircraft, etc. And who knows whatever other advanced weaponry that we might not realize yet. Let's call it off with Germany. Hell, they're beaten anyway. Then we can all team up and attack the Soviet Union. We'll find some pretext. We're the past masters of finding a pretext. We're the British. We can make up any kind of scenario and get everybody wound up to fight the Soviet menace. But Roosevelt was saying, no, that doesn't sound like a good idea to me. I know how to handle Uncle Joe. So they didn't adopt that strategy. So then they had to deal with them for another 40 years after the war. So, it's kind of like deal with it now or deal with it later. Churchill was saying, I'd just rather get it over with now, but whatever, it's just the way I'm looking at it. And that Anglo, that London, England mentality. So let's see any comments here. Talking about Dresden, history lesson. Northern Italy was able to hold the Moors at bay, hence their name, hence their being more Germanic. Okay, so one little problem the Allies had was they didn't realize that Germany had some cards left to play. Hitler, who had already left East Prussia, since it was going to fall, went back to Berlin. And he was thinking, along with some advisors, he said, well, look, if we just fight a defensive war, we got what percentage chance of winning? Everybody agreed. No chance. 0% chance. Maybe we could hold out till 1946, but what's the point of that? We're still going to lose. But maybe, just maybe, we could start pulling tanks, planes, mobile artillery from the Eastern Front and stockpiling them here at the Ardennes Forest, where we burst through in 1940 to defeat France. They did a lot of, calculation studies, German High Command, Western High Command, and they said, well, okay, this is assuming we could attack undetected. Allied intelligence might realize what we're trying to do, and we had no chance. But they say, let's say for the sake of argument, we launch this major offensive, and we're not detected, and we make a surprise attack. What are the chances that we could win the victory? They determined that probably it'd be about 10% chance, 90% chance of failure, 10% chance of success. And that's what they told Hitler. He said, okay, if we don't make the attack, our chances of success rest at what percentage? They said no chance, 0%. We guaranteed to lose. Okay. If we launch the attack on the West, we have a 10% chance of victory there. So he figured, hey, let's go with a tiny chance of success as opposed to no chance of success. And they thought, generally, okay, that could, because after all, you never know what could happen. I mean, more than likely, you're not going to succeed, but just what if by some great occurrence, it succeeded. Even in 1940, remember the Ardennes offensive, case yellow in 1940 here, they had a fairly high amount of confidence that they could draw the Allies, British, French, and Belgium, up to this line here, and then smash through underneath them and go to the sea, trapping their entire armies here and winning the war, or, well, so they believed. But still, there was a lot of questions about that in 1940. It might fail, in which case it does fail, Germany will lose in 1940, without a doubt. And then, of course, if we lose on the Western Front, the Soviet Union will immediately invade from the East, our partners. This was not even No one in their right mind would doubt that. But it did succeed. The Allies were totally caught off guard. They came black, although some British military agents, if you want to call that, or assets, had warned that they were expecting a German attack through the Ardennes forest, but they were largely ignored. So then in 1944, November, let's go to 75 years ago today, the Germans start to quietly amass an enormous offensive force on the western border by Luxembourg and Belgium. About 500,000 troops, 450 to 500,000 troops, many of which are very highly trained SS divisions, Schutzstaffel SS, highly motivated since the country's under threat. And when the country comes under threat, they kind of go crazy. That's the parish calling to tell me that the water's back on, or it's safe to drink. So just ignore that. Thousands of tanks and self-propelled artillery, and even thousands of planes, which Germany was able to scavenge up thousands of aircraft and put on along the border here. The weather was very bad, misty, overcast, so Allied air superiority wouldn't matter so much, because then you risk strafing and bombing your own troops. So this went on for about a month. 400,000 to 500,000 German soldiers, thousands of aircraft and tanks right here on the front lines in the face of the American troops. Now, this was a catastrophic failure of Allied American Army intelligence. You see that red line? The American soldiers was right up there to the German lines, and they would shoot at each other across the line occasionally, but things had kind of settled down by November, December, and they wait till the spring. They wait till the spring to launch their invasion of Germany. So they thought, well, yeah, everything's going to go pretty well, and then we'll go into Germany, and that'll be it. Never dreaming, and how they did not detect this. It's not like a few troops were being stockpiled along the border. We're talking about 450,000 soldiers or more, thousands of tanks and aircraft right in literally yards away, not miles away. Never detected it. Although some American intelligence assets for the U.S. Army intelligence were warning back at the headquarters, they said, it's strange, it's strange. We used to monitor the German radio traffic all the time, and we knew their code. Americans had broken the German and Japanese code. We knew what they were going to do. We read everything, but we're not getting anything. There's no traffic, nothing, no radio communication whatsoever on the Eastern Front. It's gone totally dead silent, which to us is an indication that something is afoot. We don't feel comfortable with this. This is not normal. Of course, the Germans had ended all radio silence because they knew the Americans were reading their broadcasts. I'm talking about to each other. And so they were sending all their communiques through courier, just hand-delivered letters, what you would call telegram, or even a letter you write, put in an envelope, and say, give that to somebody. Okay. But the American High Command say, oh, forget it. Kind of like Pearl Harbor, 1941. Forget about it. You remember that? And they kept saying, I don't know, something doesn't seem right, but, oh, don't worry about it, 9/11, Adam Schiff, remember, he was trying to tell George W. Bush for like 6 weeks straight. I think it was the guy Schiff, right? He was telling Bush, look, there's a plot to hijack airliners, 737s, and crash them into buildings in America. We got this from Philippine intelligence. And the Bush administration kept saying, forget about it. I don't even know this guy. Get lost, take a hike. Okay. So same thing happened here. And then, of course, December 15th, 1944, the largest German attack on the Western Front, German offensive on the Western Front since 1940, heading toward Antwerp here, the Allied port, which they were trying to get ready to unload massive amount of material to invade Germany. Well, we'll do that if we get to December 1944, but that was what was coming. Catastrophic failure of intelligence, the most catastrophic failure of intelligence up until September 11, 2001. Absolutely inexcusable that such a thing could occur. That you're about to be attacked by 500,000 troops and thousands of planes, and they're stockpiling their armaments right in your face, and you don't detect it. This is not something that should be excused. So that's the situation there. The Asian Pacific Front, there's not much to say about that. Japan, Empire of Japan, very foolishly going to war with the British Empire and the United States in December 1941, with no chance of being supported by Germany, except, by radio broadcasts and propaganda. That's nice, but it doesn't help you win. With only a small percentage of the capability of the United States, like 10 to 1, outmatched economically and materially 10 to 1 by the United States and Great Britain, and even worse when they are combined, are going to launch their big attacks on the U.S. and British empires, British Empire and American territories, an empire, but they don't call it that. And with predictable results. They can't hold any of it. So you see the big purple line. This is what they held at their greatest extent. Well, that's wonderful, but capturing it and holding it is two different things. And they're just like Germany. They could capture it, but they couldn't hold it. And so Japan on the land, Manchukuo and northeastern China and even southern coastal China, yeah, they can control those territories. But China had a bad habit of forgetting to surrender, China saying, the Japanese kept telling China in 1937, 38, 39, 40, 41, you've lost, give up. And the Chinese under Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek say, well, you say we've lost. Well, we haven't given up. You're the one that keeps mentioning us giving up. Well, if you've won, why don't you win? So the Japanese, in a terrible trap, have no chance of beating China. Taking a lot of land, sure. But they're bankrupting their country for a meaningless pile of nothing. So then they attack. Now we know by 1944, the Allies are already invading Burma here from India. Japanese are not going to be able to hold Burma. So the Allies are going to slowly chip away at Burma, Myanmar. The Allies have counterattacked down in the southeastern area of the Japanese, Solomon Islands, slowly pushing the Japanese back into New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Gilbert Islands. They defeated the Japanese in June 1942 at Midway. Well, that's only 7 months after Pearl Harbor. So Japan was already losing the war after 7 months. 7 months, they're losing the war. They're going to take back those Alaskan islands, 1943. And they're going to just slowly chip away and move back, slowly but surely, chipping away at the Japanese territories in the Pacific. And then by October 1944, last month, 75 years ago, they invade the Philippines, American territory, Commonwealth of the Philippines. Japanese are not able to stop them. Next group of islands is Taiwan, which is a Japanese, not occupied island, but a Japanese territory since 1895. Formosa, Taiwan. It's mostly Chinese people, but it's a Japanese territory. And then we have the, the Ryukyu Islands here. So Japan was doing one thing, and they were doing one thing steadily, and that was losing. Oh, sure, they took over some mainland Chinese territory in 1944. Look good on a map. Doesn't have much meaning. Won't help. So anyway, that's the scenario there. What can you say? 1944, it's over, except for that tiny chance that Germany could somehow win in the Battle of the Ardennes offensive, the Watch on the Rhine autumn mist, which, as it turns out, they did not succeed, but it was a shocking attack. Stunning, really, because the Allies thought Germany had no offensive ability after the Battle of Kirks, no real offensive ability after the Battle of Kirks in August 1943. So for them to launch such an attack was mind-boggling, really. But anyway, got to run. Have a good day, says Joe. You too. We had the atomic bomb. We could have used it on the Soviets. Yeah, well, Roosevelt said, no thanks. Voltron says, war makes me hungry. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for watching this video production. The cran burrito was, that's okay. And as a flavored malt beverage, it's really an A. Not that I would actually want to drink a flavored malt beverage, but I did drink it just for review purposes. But it's all right. I got to admit it. I can slag on these things all day. But still, yeah, it's okay. I do have to admit I like it. It's a lot more enjoyable than World War II. There's no enjoyment watching, talking about that. Such a terrible, avoidable conflict. No reason that should have ever happened. Like Pat Buchanan said, the unnecessary war. You say, well, World War I was unnecessary. Exactly. It certainly was. So you think of all the wars of the 20th century, and not to mention the 21st, they were all avoidable. Totally avoidable. But people are crazy. They do crazy things. Thanks for watching this video production.